Welcome, everyone. Public notice is given that Smithfield City Council will meet in a regularly scheduled meeting at 96 South Main, Smithfield, Utah on Wednesday, July 8, 2026. The meeting will begin at 6:02 p.m. sharp. I'd like to excuse Councilman Jay Downs. He's in beautiful San Diego with his wife, so I keep getting photos of sunset, so hope he's having fun. So. I'd like to turn the time over to Chris Olson for the Welcome Pledge of Allegiance, thought or prayer.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll start us off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I've asked my wonderful wife, Kelly, if she would give the opening prayer, and then I'll have a very short thought. All rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be able to gather as citizens of this great community, and we're grateful for those who are willing to lead and direct our city. We're grateful for the freedoms we enjoy in this country and opportunity that we have to come together as citizens. We pray that Thy Spirit will be with us and that we'll be able to think clearly and make wise decisions for the betterment of everyone in our community, and that we can feel a sense of camaraderie and peace where we live. And these things we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that wonderful prayer, Kelly. I've been pretty reflective this year with our America 250 and having the opportunity to be involved on that committee. And there's been many people here on the council and mayor and who have been involved, and many residents who have been involved with that committee and with helping out with different events. And for me, it's been quite a neat opportunity to be involved. But I don't know, I guess this last event that we had on July 5th was just very special for me. I had an opportunity to just kind of reflect and just listen to some beautiful music. There were some very talented people. One of them who might even be on our council who might have been involved there. I won't name any names, but he's sitting on the end. But anyways, I don't know. I've just had this grateful heart for the freedoms that we have. I don't know how often council members are crying up here, but that's kind of me. Speaking from my heart, I love this country that we live in, and I love the city that we live in. We've got a lot of good people doing a lot of good things. And so my thought is a thought of gratefulness for our 250 years of independence. Hopefully we can make that go a lot longer. And thank you all for being here and for being involved. And that's my thought. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Agenda item number 1, approval of the City Council meeting minutes from June 24, 2026.
I will make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from June 24th, 2026.
I'll second the motion.
How do we vote? John?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Passes. Agenda item number 2, public comment on items not on the agenda. So I'd like to open the public comments section at 6:07 p.m. if anyone has anything to share. No takers? I'll close the public comment section at 6:08 p.m. Agenda item number 3, moving briskly along here. Discussion on the scheduling for future youth theater program performances. I'd like to turn the time over to Kelly Olson and Anna Sorensen.
All right, hello, you council members. I am Hannah Sorensen. I am the director and the head of the board of the Smithfield Youth Theater. I have been leading this group for 3 years, but I started my journey with the youth theater in 2010, so 16 years ago, as a parent volunteer. So in the last 16 years, I have developed a very deep love for this program and the benefits it brings to our community. With me, I have a couple of my board members, Kelly Olson, who is my business manager, and Susan Barris, who is one of my assistant directors, who led the program ahead of me for 15 years. I was like, she has been with it since the beginning. So they are vital, vital people to me and to how this whole thing works. To get started, I wanted to go ahead and talk about a recent survey that we conducted with the citizens of the community. We gathered some feedback about our program and what it has meant to them. So some of the things that we have heard. So the theater is a cornerstone in our culture. It offers an accessible, free, and inclusive fine arts experience for Smithfield children. And that has been reflected in the comments that we received back from the community. Such comments as, this event has been so fun to look forward to each year. We have loved being able to come with our families and invite others to the show. We knew we could invite everyone that wanted to come because it wouldn't add any financial strain for them to support their family member. Often there are shows that they want to participate in, but are unable because of the cost. Thank you for allowing this production to continue for so many years and allowing it to be easy to share with others. Another comment, the fact that Smithfield City has supported and carried out health days celebrations for more than 100 years is truly monumental. It speaks to the strong sense of community and tradition that makes Smithfield such a special place to live. I love living in this city, and I often tell others how amazing it is, from the dedication of the City Council to the outstanding programs offered through the Rec Center, the Historical Society, and Health Days. Smithfield City and its residents consistently demonstrate their commitment to families and community involvement. These events and opportunities are a big part of what makes Smithfield City the best place to live in Cache Valley. I am grateful to be a part of a community that invests so much in its residents and works hard to create meaningful experiences for people of all ages. There are other things that this theater has brought to others. We have core benefits. We bring confidence and public speaking opportunities. Parents have overwhelmingly, in our survey, report dramatic boosts in self-esteem, social skills, and the ability of their children to speak confidently in front of large groups. Inclusivity and accessibility, because our theater gives a role to every child and removes financial barriers. We accept all who sign up to participate. It serves families who cannot otherwise afford valley-wide or private fine arts programs. And community connection, the program acts as a primary community building anchor for families, neighbors, and homeschooling networks. And I can attest to that, as I am not a native of Smithfield, Cache Valley, or Utah. I married my husband, who is a native here, and it has come to a point where now my kids dread when I go out of town with them, because since I have been involved in this program, I have met more people and know more people in Smithfield than they say their father does, who grew up here his entire life. So it does 100% strengthen community building. We are in a crisis at the moment, as the program has been conducted for the last 17 years. We have done this at Skyview in their auditorium, and they have worked closely with us to make this happen. But we have been informed that we are going to lose that opportunity for the month of May. They no longer would like us to be there, as it is a challenge for them as well at the busiest month of the school year. So we are now in a crisis dilemma of where do we go, when do we go, and how do we make this work moving forward. In our survey, we asked for those kind of questions, such as venue versus date. And we have some findings. It was interesting to read through all of this. I thought I would know exactly where everything was going, and a lot of it did go the way I thought it would, but there was also some other insights that were interesting to see from someone else's perspective that helped make us think through what we were doing and how to make this still the most positive experience for our community. We have talked about alternate venue suggestions. This program takes anywhere from 150 to, we had over 200 children one year. Somewhere between 200 and 250, I do not have that exact number. Which tells us we cannot go to a smaller venue. That is not a possibility with the amount of participation we have unless we want to cap that, which is the very top priority not to do. Other suggestions that were options, Green Canyon High School. I feel like something like that pulls us out of Smithfield and also would give us the same concerns that we have at Skyview, that we may be in way of end-of-year programs. There was a very strong standing of keeping this in Smithfield, where it is a Smithfield-only program, where children only from Smithfield are able to participate. And looking at options in Smithfield has caused me quite a bit of concern. We have the Civic Center that is not set up for this kind of production or for the kind of crowd that we pull. We could do an outdoor venue, but as we all know, May can be very iffy weather-wise, and that causes me great concern if the weather turns, what our options are for those kids who work so hard to make this happen every year. Let me know if you guys want to stop me at any point. Okay, thanks. I know we had a very long conversation, so I am trying to hit all the points that we talked about in here. We have also talked about changing the date. As of right now, Skyview has given us the last week in April as an option. There are a few concerns I have had with that. When they first gave it to us, that date for the show coincides with the state drama competition for high school, which would eliminate almost all of our high school participants. When I looked today, I had been told it had changed. This week, they did change that to the week before, so it still would be in practice time, but is doable. It does coincide with a lot of dance competitions and other things. I don't think there's a time of year where there's not something that causes stress, but that does cause stress on my board, and I lose quite a few board members who are vital to our success. So that is still one of my concerns, is if we go forward with the date that we have been offered, we are not going to have as much support on the end where these are the people who spend the hundreds of hours to get this volunteer work done. It does put a little bit of strain on my board. We are in contact with Darren Perks, the new principal at Skyview, and we are working on trying to see some options. Nothing has been figured out on that end. It's been kind of going back and forth. Kelly has been heading those conversations for me. So those are just some of the things we thought. We have thought about asking for a June, July shift. That does put strain on people's summer holidays and puts holidays in there, just the holiday itself, like the one we've just celebrated, and may cause less attendance, less participation, which is something I don't want to see. I love seeing these kids every year. I love getting to know them, and I don't want them to feel like they cannot participate. And we have looked at even shifting all the way to March. We've even thought fall. We are not sure. We don't know where that is. Like I said, we need open communication. We have kind of felt like, with how things have gone, that it was very much a non-communicative event that happened. I'm not sure exactly what happened to cause them to feel like we were this huge problem. It had never been communicated to me in the 3 years that I have been involved until this year.
In reference to Skyview?
To Skyview, yes. I feel like there maybe, to make this have worked better, there should have been a meeting with the 3 entities involved, the city, the school, and the theater, instead of just this dictation of, this is what you have, deal with it. It's, because it does affect every one of us involved. So that is a little bit of my stress right now. I do want to keep up the community value. I want to keep up, I have a quote here from someone who was talking about the mental health benefits of being able to be involved in this play. And that just made my heart sing, because that's something I hadn't considered. And with it being Health Days, what better thing to support than mental health, right? You say, people are like, there's nothing about health in Health Days. I'm like, there is. I'm there. It's us. No, it's not just us. But I love that we are able to help with that. That we're able to help these kids find friendships that they haven't had before, acceptance in ways, increase in confidence. These are all things that we have seen our youth struggle with. And if it's something that is supporting and encouraging them to have more of, then it is a good thing, and it is something we want to work hard for. All right. Moving forward.
Just when you're done.
Okay. I was just making sure I'm not moving ahead of you.
That's fine.
Moving forward, for some suggestions we have, we would love the city's help in advocating with Skyview to find a time that keeps everyone happy or happy-ish. I don't know, I've always heard that compromise means that nobody's completely happy. But, I think that there's a way that if we can work with the city and the school, that we can find a way to utilize Skyview and still help their programs to succeed as well. And support even looking into creating our own local venue that would help alleviate stress on Skyview as it being the only venue in the city that can hold any large events. I know that there has been talk of that. I have been told that it is a 10 to 20 year project. I feel that 10 to 20 years is too far in the future as we are seeing the struggle now. And it's not just with me, it is with many of our entities. Anything else? Okay.
How big of a venue do you need? Like, I know just off the cuff, but
It
how
would have
much
to be
seating?
something similar to the size of the auditorium, but it would be nice, for me alone, I fill the auditorium both show nights. Every show.
Yeah, we're full house.
I've had shows where people are standing to watch. It can't be smaller. That is one of my concerns, is things like the Civic Center is too small. We cannot get 700 plus people in there with a show. Oh, I'm sorry, I took a step back. So that is a concern for me, that we need something that size. I know also that if we did something like that, I would love to see it a multi-use space, not just a theater that we use, but a space where things like our serendipity dance can be, where our music competitions, our pageants, or I would love to see a spot for the senior citizens to have a bigger area for them. There's a lot in Smithfield that could benefit from this. And there's even communities outside of Smithfield that would be willing to rent and use that space as well, I believe. And I am more than willing to conduct a survey if you need more of that information. Okay.
All right. Hey. So, I'm Susan Barris, and yes, I've been doing this since the very first year. We moved here in '04, and our children were in the first show. There were 35 kids, and we did it in a stake center. And it was small for a couple years, and then it got big. In the third year, it just was clearly needed, So this is not, and it's never dipped. I think the lowest we've ever had in the years since I took over, I think 140 was the smallest that we had. So clearly, if you say there's 140 children and probably 100 volunteers, that's a lot of people and a lot of hours. So we all know, I think you all know, what a value it is, and that it makes the community stronger to have that kind of a connection, and the altruism that's involved in this, because it is so much work. It is hard, and it's kind of thankless work in a lot of ways until you see the kids. Once you start working with the kids, you remember why you're doing it. But one of the concerns I have, if we move it into the summer, people think, oh, it's just 2 weeks, but it's not. All the prep that happens ahead of time, the hundreds of hours, that would pretty much take the volunteers' summer away. And I don't see that happening. I think it would be unfortunate if that's what we ended up doing. So we are hoping that we can find a time with Skyview that'll work with their schedule. We have always accommodated whenever we've been approached. We've never had a problem accommodating, doing the best we can to make it work. When they've had a need or anybody's had a problem or an issue or concern, we've always addressed it. We've always seemed to have come out with a good solution. As Hannah said, the latest few years, we've not had great communication returned. So it's very difficult to have one-way communication. So when something goes wrong, we don't know about it till it goes wrong. Oh, or if something's shifting, we don't know till it's shifting. And so we're just pivoting on the fly. But we do our best, and we still do the accommodating. We're happy to try and make it work. We are not divas, and we are not in this for glory. And I can say that of every volunteer, because no volunteer gets glory. It is about the children, and that's enormous. It also builds self-confidence of the adults. And all these adults, I mean, all of you are over 25. So I know you all had moments where you think, the ships have sailed. But honestly, there are still ships in the harbor. You just have to find them and get on those. And I see so many adults go, I didn't know I could create a costume. I didn't know I could work backstage. I didn't know I could teach dancing to these kids. I didn't know I could do these things. And to see that grow and happen, and then it's exponential because that passes on to their kids. So the value is just, it's innumerable values, obviously. Okay. Yes, communication is vital. We have never been contentious. I think anyone that's worked with us would agree. And we try and do the right thing for the right reasons, with the right goals, without being greedy, and try and do it as selflessly as possible, while still not like killing ourselves. There's a limit. There are some boundaries. So that's not stopping. This is something that we aren't sure how to remedy on our own. So that's why we're here, is to make sure that we have a voice that is heard, not just by you, but by the school district. And any contention, especially regarding something like this, won't serve the children or the community. So we have no bone to pick, but we would like to have open communication, and we would love to have that with respect. We feel we are as respectful as we can be to the venue, to those that run it, to those that clean it. I mean, we have been told year after year, I have been told by Skyview that we're like the best group that uses their facility, because we're respectful, we make sure we're clean, we keep the kids under control. If they see a problem and bring it to our attention, it's addressed, and it never happens again because it's on our radar. So I think that's amazing for this many volunteers and kids, and to still have somebody telling me that every year. We were always welcome. Over the last few years, we've felt more and more, less and less welcome, and more of a nuisance. And we've tried not to be a nuisance, but apparently we're still a nuisance. So, without anyone giving us any reasons for those feelings, we can't address. You can't address what you don't know. You can't fix if you don't know what's wrong. So that, to me, is probably the number one concern, is communication. Not just being told what they don't like, but also communicating what's going on. What changes need to happen? Oh, suddenly a schedule changes. Okay, let us know. We'll pivot with you, but communicate. I would like to say something that might not be popular, but I just would like to say, because Hannah will not say it, and I honestly think that she deserves an apology. She was addressed in a very aggressive and vitriolic way about this in a public space with students present. And I think that's unconscionable for someone in a position of authority, like a teacher, to address any other adult or child in that way. But you have a community member, and that the kids were witnesses to that conversation or diatribe. And so I personally would appreciate somebody addressing that I think she deserves. This was a pretty serious blindsiding, and it wasn't handled very appropriately. So I think she should have an apology. I think in the future, not just open communication, but when there are concerns, it should be done in private, it should be done with respect, and it should be done where the students are not present, because unless they're part of the conversation. I had a couple of questions that I just want to have on the radar. I understand the Art Council is looking at possibly bringing the theater in under their umbrella instead of Health Days. And I haven't been part of any of these conversations, so if I'm wrong, just erase this. But and that what that might do, and it's either way, great, I think. But the concern I have is that then if more RAPS funding is requested for the city under the Art Council, it could reduce our RAPS funding potentially. So I would like to make sure that if that were to happen, that the funding that's requested by the Art Council would be increased to the point where we wouldn't actually lose the funding. That's a significant concern. So if you guys could maybe keep that on your radar. And the other thing is, when we if we shift the show, we need to have somewhere to build the sets, and we use the bay where the storage is. And in the spring, we always hope that the snow is gone and the big machines can get pulled out so we can use that far east bay to build sets. We usually need it for the month before the show. So if it gets moved, for example, if our show gets moved to April, it might be hard to get those machines put somewhere else that are there for protection from weather if we're doing this for like March and April, like the end of March into April. So I just want that to be taken into consideration, that we do still need that space usually for the month before the show.
You're talking about the Civic Center?
The Civic Center Bay, yeah,
Building.
where the costumes are held. So that, I just want that on somebody's radar so that we still have a commitment of a place to do what we need to get that show put together. And then I also just want to appreciate the years of support and collaboration, not just from the city, but from the school. I want it on the record that for the most part, by and large, for most of the years that we have been actually partners, it has felt like a collaboration. And it's only in the more recent years that it has felt less and less like that. So I don't want to discount what great partners and collaboration we've had with the school and the city. And from our point of view, we are passionate and we know it. And so sometimes we might come across a little evangelical about this, but when you watch children's lives change and you hear about it, and you talk to college kids who come into your office because you work on campus, and they tell you what an impact it had in their lives, and they've graduated and gone on, and they still tell you about what it meant to them. I've heard so many stories, and I won't go into them all because there's too many, but kids who move in, no friends, no place, they find a place, they find a community. That's important, that's what we want here. It shouldn't be that the only people who feel like they have a place have grandparents who went to kindergarten together. It should be everyone. And that's one way to do it, is this is because, as Hannah said, everyone's welcome. They feel that. And we do our best to really foster that. It builds a better place to live when we have this kind of an effort on behalf of our children. That is a great statement about the people in our city and about the city leaders, that you have been so supportive all these years of this. And I know that you value that as well. So thank you so much for letting me have a moment and for helping us to resolve this so that we don't lose the great institution and tradition that has been created.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say, I just wanted to add a couple more comments from our community about how much Skyview has meant to them. They have in here, many people have, I actually read this more than once, about how being able to use Skyview has helped their children not be afraid to go to Skyview. They already feel like they know it, they're familiar with it, and it has helped them make that transition from the middle school to the high school so much easier because they have been there. And activities at the rec center, the theater, all those things are things that have helped these kids feel comfortable in a situation that at that age can feel scary. And there's a comment here from a move-in from 3 years ago that I liked. She just said, I moved here from Colorado 3 years ago, and from the beginning I was so touched at how the schools felt more like a community space. It gave me faith in both the city and the schools that they could work together so well. It showed me that students and citizens were truly looking out for each other and not competing. I'm sad to see this rose-colored vision has gone and has been tainted a bit by the decisions made to push the Smithfield Youth Theater out of the school space. And that kind of hurt to feel that, because I've always felt like one of the things that has drawn me to Smithfield, and why I told my husband when we got married I didn't want to leave, is, for me, this is the utmost compliment I can give Smithfield, is it has a Hallmark movie feel. I love that, and I don't like to see it change. I'd like to continue seeing community supporting community, school supporting school, and school and community supporting one another. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for us before we sit down?
I have a couple of questions, I guess. One, in terms of the space requires, you're talking about space for building sets, preparing costumes, kind of prep space. You're also talking about rehearsal space and time, as well as several nights of performance.
So that
space
is
and
something
time.
I did fail to address, was rehearsal space. Currently, we have used, we used to use Skyview for a full 2 weeks. And then things got busy. They asked us to go down to 1 week for our tech week when we can get on the stage. And we accommodated that. And we started using elementary schools, primarily Sunrise Elementary, for our rehearsal space. That was possible because they are ending their basketball season with the basketball teams who use their gym. So we were able to get in there. With a change in time of year, we will lose the ability most likely to use Sunrise, which has 2 gyms. So that has always been nice because we can get 2 groups, you know, rehearsing at the same time. The other schools do not have that capability, but a lot of basketball teams utilize our elementary school gyms. I have talked with Richard at the rec center about other options, but I do know our dance company and basketball teams all we have very limited space here. So that is a concern of where would we move our practices to. We're looking at an option to see if we can get Skyview back for 2 weeks. I don't know if it's gonna work or not. We have not heard back from Principal Perks on that yet. But that is a concern. And they said we usually do use the Civic Center Bay. The weather is good enough in April usually that they can pull the vehicles out. We use the Bay area. Sometimes we're outside painting and letting it dry. If we're moving our set production to March, it's very likely that the trucks are not gonna be able to be moved out. There's usually still snow or snowing, and we're not gonna be able to leave sets outside to dry. So that is a concern, is how do we make this work and shift all the logistics that go into putting this show on. It's really hard if you make me do sets in a week. My painters don't like it.
So it sounds like your concern with the timing, the scheduling of this is, we seem to have been using kind of the sweet spot in between the winter, when we have more people, but and the summer where we would lose people, right?
Yeah.
And also the equipment bay for the set prep, right?
Yeah.
And so, and of course, we've loved to have it as part of the Health Days kind of block there at the end of April, beginning of May. How vital is that to the theater and its continuation, that it be part of that small window of Health Days? I mean, I'm just spitballing here. What if it was in January, or what if it was in February, or some other time of year even, or September, or?
Winter is hard, because then, once again, we would have a lot of set production issues. But I am less available in like January and February. Spring does work best for me personally, but I know this isn't just about me. I would be very sad if I had to step down because of a change. September, we have talked about, I think that was our 3rd highest change when we did the survey. We did ask the community what month works best. I think April and June tied for 2nd if we can't have May. May is, even though it's busy, I think since citizens are used to it, they plan for that. But June, I do understand from the school, is not so available because of 4 Seasons using the school space then. And if we go into like the last week of June, then we're hitting the 4th of July holiday, and I think we would have
Sure.
a huge decrease in activity there. Sure. And I would hate to see that.
maybe kind of following along with what he's already started, if scheduling wasn't a problem, what would be your optimal time frame that you would want to try to do this if there wasn't any problem with any scheduling whatsoever?
I do love keeping it in May personally for me. I love it with the health days. I do think that that has a huge draw to it. It is, next to the parade, it is the most attended event at health days, arguably. I think the parade probably draws more people, but I think after that, we draw more people than the baseball game and even some of the fair stuff. Like I said, we have 700 plus people each night coming to watch the show. It is a vital part of that celebration, and I love having it as part of that celebration. It could be any time of year, and I think we'd still have success. I think it would just take time for people to get used to an adjustment.
And that kind of leads into my second question, which is we've kind of been tiptoeing around it, but that is, how much of an impact do you think that would be if it got moved away from health days and didn't become a part of health days program events? I mean, health days itself actually has kind of expanded a little bit to kind of a week-long process. It used to just be a weekend. And so, I don't know, thoughts there.
Yeah, well, I do know that I have had people request us to do 2 plays a year. I think they forget we're volunteers, but you know, and some of us would probably stick with it. I think most of my board would probably quit on me though. But I think that if we moved it to a different time of year, we could be successful, but I would want it to be a time when it's not going to compete with, you know, like Storybook Festival, which is such a fantastic thing in the winter. I've loved that the last couple of years, and we have helped with that as well. I think keeping it in the spring is probably our best option. I think if you move it to fall, you're going to be competing with a lot of the very popular sports, high school-wise, and we lose a lot of people there too.
And they have shows in the fall, too.
Yes.
So it's not just that.
And yes, they do a show each trimester, so I think we are going to run into, when is the high school doing their theater program stuff? It's going to continue to be an issue that we need to discuss with them, but I would like it to be more of a discussion rather than a throwdown.
So that you're kind of leading me into one more quick question, and I don't want to hog if other people have questions, but that and you're mentioning that there are other, you know, things that are going on, other events. However, you guys have really only been using it after hours, if I'm correct, right? It's been after 4:30.
Yes.
And so, I don't know, to me that, in my personal opinion, that should open up the availability, I would think, to some degree. So I'm not sure, I don't know, I'm just trying to think there.
I do know one of the issues with that is when we do come in for the week, we bring in our sets on the Monday night. We do not practice on Mondays currently, that is the music festival. But that before the music festival, I come in with my set manager and we set the stage, and our sets are on stage all week. So it does keep them from being able to use the auditorium for anything else. I do know the music festival is able to do it because they close that curtain and they just use the apron of the stage. So I know that is part of the contention with the theater, is he as well has a production he wants to do, and we can't both have sets on the stage at the same time.
Okay.
They also rent the space, so there's a lot of other programs that use the space for shows or productions or what have you, competitions. So it's a matter of where does that land, you know? That's fine, it's good that happens. We just have to figure out what we can do with that. I had one other thought that went away. Go.
So who's been in correspondence with this principal? And moving forward, I'm happy to call and talk to them, and I just don't want to double what you're doing, so.
Kelly's turn.
I have been in contact with him, going back and forth and kind of carboning these guys on it as well. We've left it at, initially we wanted to do a physical meeting and he wanted to find out more information. So he did that, and then he wanted to bring in the drama teacher and the scheduler, and I think that an actual meeting may be a little bit more challenging, so we've just been doing more correspondence via email on that. But
Can you start CCing me in that, please?
Mhm.
And maybe a question would be, is there any value to having someone from the city council or mayor or someone there in any of those meetings? Would that be helpful for you, or would that be more, or
like I
would
said,
that
I'm
be more
not sure if it will
difficult?
end up being a physical meeting, but
Yeah.
I think if we get you carboned into it, then I think that can open some dialogue.
I mean, if you're just running in walls, I'm not saying I have this magic wand to fix it, but I'm happy to assist, and I'm sure all of us are too, whatever we can do to help, so.
Thank you.
So if
Thank you.
there's a magic wand, sorry, Todd, go ahead,
No, that's fine.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, going back to the size of the venue being an issue, have there been thoughts of expanding the time frame with smaller nightly performances rather than having just the few
Yeah.
larger ones?
So part of that, I know that there are community groups that do that in the summer, for example, where they'll have 8 different groups and they'll do shows different nights and they perform longer. They only engage, I think the kids are involved for 2 weeks with that, but I think the hours are different, and I think our platform, the way it is, we'd be hard pressed to get all these volunteers. That would be a pretty big shift and lift, and I'm not sure they'd get the same quality experience. I'm not saying those aren't quality experiences, but this is a very unique setup that I think is worth trying to save, because it is so grand for these kids in that scale. Yeah.
And I would absolutely agree with that, but I think, you know, in all of the bounds between school, whatever our limited capability is to have an influence, and I would think probably no more than potentially an influence with the school. We don't have any direct ability to make any mandates or threats or anything beyond amenable suggestions. But with that, I think we need to understand just as clearly as possible what their primary, for lack of a better term, beefs
Right.
are with this, so that we can have a clear understanding.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
I think we feel the
That
same
always
way.
helps.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
know where because then we have a place to go. We've got
Yeah.
something to work with. I do know, when, in the past, one year, and I can't remember what year it was, we tried having 2 rehearsal venues, and then we moved to Skyview for the show. And it was a nightmare for the families, because you can't say, I have 4 kids in the show of different ages. They go to different age groups, and this one is rehearsing here, and this one's rehearsing there at the same time. Oh, wait, on the heels of it became really, we had a lot of struggle. The families really had a hard time with that. So we've tried to avoid that since then, which I could see happening if we broke it into smaller groups to do that again. So, yeah, it would be a massive overhaul to do that. I honestly think there's a way to make this work. I just think we have to find out if they can give us some space during at least some reasonable time of year that we can possibly not have to shift the entire program and make it work, you know. Yeah.
I don't know if we want to be on the record with this or if you want to talk about it, but I know that Hannah would be more than happy to talk with you about what happened and what was said. The conversation had to Hannah, not with her, demonstrates the thoughts and the reasons why he's feeling this way. The drama teacher at the high school, having, you know, I oversee the Arts Council. I've worked with Hannah, and I've had conversations with her, so I understand this. And so I think I would encourage all of you to have a conversation with Hannah about what that conversation was. And that will help you understand what his reasonings are for not wanting to work with us. I don't know if you want to talk about it now or if you just would like them to reach out to you and have a conversation with you about that, because it explains to me why things are going on.
I can if they would like me to. That is up to you guys if you would like that to be on record.
So, I mean, with that being said, I don't have questions. I just want you guys to know that I fully support what you're doing. I'm on the backside of it. I support you, and I would like to see something happen. And I like that we're having these beginning conversations to make something happen, because I do see the importance of it. I do think that health days is health, and we've got physical and mental health. These youth need it, and if we can't make it work in health days, that's okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world. As long as it's available to these youth, that's the important thing. But I just think the backstory to it is it's very rotten, it's very immature, and it's not understanding the importance of it. And I think that's where I struggle. It's something that can be avoided. It's something that we can work together on, and I think that's the thing that hurts the most.
Well, because for me, this whole program is about community. I love seeing the community come together, because this isn't just my play. I do say sometimes it's my play because I put so much heart into it, but it is the community, and I love seeing everybody get together. I will say that when this started, after this conversation, I don't know if I can call it that, but after the confrontation, that's probably a better word for it, I had pushed it aside as Mr. Rash was under stress. It was a stressful time for him and me both, and I just assumed that I was the person who kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back. I have since found out that that probably is not true. This is just how things can be sometimes with him. But I had gone to the school with one of my board members to borrow props for the play. It's a normal thing we do. We share props occasionally, costumes. And I had made an offhanded comment about the theater retreat that the kids were having and how that was messing with my rehearsals. And I meant it lightheartedly. It was not taken lightheartedly. And I was turned on. And I was informed how much I was hated, how much my program is hated. The choir teacher hates me, the city hates me, the rec center hates me, and told that I was a blight, pretty much, on Smithfield, and that he was actively trying to get me kicked out of the school and to cancel my program. I'm not sure what triggered that. I had only had positive interactions before that. Like I said, this is where we came in with the communication needs to be opened up. That if I have done something, or if our program has done something to step on toes, I would rather someone come to me and say, let's talk about this. You know, we're having some issues, we need to talk about this. And it didn't happen that way. And I can tell you, Kelly was there at the rehearsal that I went to right after this happened, and I was very much in shock. I've never had that kind of vitriol spewed at me. It was very much a tone that I've never felt before, and it was impactful to me in not a positive way, and I did not function well at my rehearsal that day, and my assistant directors had to take over for me. And I'm not too soft. I'm a pretty tough person, but it did have a huge impact on me, and it still occasionally does. I do try to give Mr. Rash grace in the moment that he was stressed, but I've had people come to me since saying they've had similar experiences, and it was done in front of students. And that really bothers me personally, that it was done in front of students, because they don't need to see that. I mean, if you want to be angry with me, but do it in a way that is professional. I can handle people being angry with me. Ask my children. So yes, that was a very impactful, stressful, and I chose not to address it at that time, as I was dealing with the middle of my own rehearsals. And I had just assumed that it was a moment of just, I'm stressed out, and I just vented at the wrong moment. But like I said, I have found that he has moved forward with that, and he is actively trying to influence others in that direction.
Thank you for sharing. I know that's hard. Let me just throw an idea out here.
Okay.
So, end game, end goal, Skyview Auditorium, right? Worst case scenario, could you make a rented tent or space that's yours temporarily work? I know that's
a
not
large tent.
Well, that's why
I'm like, that is a large tent and a large amount of money.
So I understand. I'm throwing
Okay.
ideas out here.
Right.
So if we had a worst case scenario backup plan that doesn't derail your program as we work through these things. So I realize we're a ways away from starting production, things like that, but just an idea. I don't know.
At the last art council meeting, Jessica Higginbotham did throw out that Dan Sundstrom has built that new indoor arena. I have not seen it personally. I do not know the size of it, that he was willing to let us use for free, but that still does not come free, as I still would need a stage, lighting capabilities, and sound capabilities. That is something big that we are able to use right now at Skyview, is we do borrow their microphones and we rent some as well, but about half of them come from Skyview. I looked into buying some with extra funds that I had left over. They're $2,000 a piece. So just know that I have looked at this, but it would mean I would need an increase in budget to rent the things that are needed in order to pull off what I'm doing, that have come cheaper by renting Skyview. So that would be a significant detail that we would have to look at, is how much does that raise the cost of the production to, like you said, use a tent and have a stage and lighting and sound that would continue this. I am willing to adjust my play to keep it going, make it less grand if I have to, though that would really make the one student who said she felt like she was on Broadway sad. But but I am willing to adjust to make things work, but I don't know if I have the budget to adjust that far.
I understand.
One more question, and this may not be a popular question, but I remember when the play was held at the Stake Center way back in the day, and it's been beautiful to see how it's grown, and it's a wonderful influence for the young people in the city in so many ways. At some point, it probably will happen that the city becomes too big for us to say, everybody's in. Do you as a company have a sense of what that point might be, and are we nearing that point? Are we still 5-10 years away from that? Because that could influence what we're talking about here, right? If we're talking about the scale of production.
Yes, and that has been addressed with my board. It has something we have very much recognized. My first year was the year that we did Lion King, and that was the year that we had almost 250 children involved. That was very, very tight. What was it, 235, I think, or something like that? It was, yeah, like I said, almost 250 children. We made it work, but at that point, we were like, if it continues to be that size, we need to come up with other options, and we have discussed what that could look like. We have not made any decisions on exactly. We've discussed whether we would move to a 2-cast system, where one cast one night, one cast another night. We have talked about if we needed to cap it and say, okay, only so many kids of each age group can sign up, and then we're done. That one still hurts my heart to tell a child no. We have looked at, do we add another performance so that we can do the 2 casts? We have discussed things. We have not come to an exact solution. And I feel like as long as that is still an open discussion, we know that eventually we will have to adjust. I know that I've had people say, why don't you allow kids from Hyde Park or Richmond join? I'm like, because right now I can barely handle Smithfield. We're to that point. And I don't know if that means in the future we do look at a 2-year play option and what that would look like, and, and seeing if that relieves it. But that is one of the beauties of us having it during the busiest month, was that there was enough kids who did not sign up because they had other things going. So every year, it's not always the exact same kids. It shifts. One year they'll choose us, and then the next year they'll choose to go play soccer, or something like that. So I don't know how this shift in time frame will change my signups. Like I said, I already know that my board members are like, we're out. This is competition dance season. There's just no way. So, yes, but it has been a discussion we've had. Susan has an idea.
Well, I just wanted to say, we went from 35 to like 50 to 180. And the least we've had since then is 140, and the most we had was 250. So in all those years, we've grown a lot as a city. But as Hannah said, sometimes they do something else, or they don't like the show, or so far, we've been able to manage those numbers. So until I see something over 250, I'm not too worried. This has been kind of stable that way.
This last year, we had about 160 to 170 kids. I know there's a lot of excitement for next year's show. I don't know what the numbers will look like yet.
Kind of a side note question. Jen, isn't there also the music competition that happens around that same time? And is that impacted by being able to use or not being able to use this
It
area?
depends on if it's been rented out by the drama department at the high school, because they have priority where it is the high school. I don't know, confirm this, I don't know if he said anything to the Musicians Cup.
He has. You
It's-
guys are
he-
allowed to keep your day, but you will not have us to perform at, so that would be something you would have to consider. But the music competition, they said, could stay at Skyview on the same day.
Right, and the royalty is involved with the Musicians Cup and the Youth Theater. They attend both, and they present, and they award, and they're introduced, so they're all connected,
Yeah.
and it would look different, but yeah, they're.
There would be
Basically,
adjustments.
Skyview has taken priority over the whole week of Health Days, and so every program that's held there that week is gonna have to look at something different, whether it's a venue or different date and time.
Mhm.
So Health Days is gonna look very different, and not very many things are gonna be available.
On that same note, it would be a shame, I must say, if the winners of the music competition didn't have a full house to play to. We started that years ago because we realized that when they have their initial competition, it's a small audience, and so it's been pretty special for them to be able to perform to a
They
full
love it.
house. But that wouldn't work if we're in April. I mean, that's not the be all end all, but that would be a,
It is a consideration to take.
Yeah, it just perfectly lines up where the pageant is in March and the Musicians Cup, and it just, the timing works out great to make them all work together. And I've been able to see in the last 3 years how they just flow and work together so wonderfully, and it just correlates so perfectly into Health Days, and it's just worked so well until this year. And it's just like, it's not just one thing, it's multiple things that we're gonna have to rethink, and it's really unfortunate. The community loves this, and we are a health city, and these are all things that are involved in health, and it's just a shame.
It also
I don't want
changes
to
the
see-
Citizen of the Year award, because that's done at our program as well.
Yes, it is. I would hate for Health Days to look like we have a parade and we have this, we have the game, and then we're done.
I know my kids will be sad to miss the parade.
There's a lot of wonderful things that happen in that week, and so many things are now being affected by it. So this isn't just the youth theater we're just talking about. It's a lot of different things throughout that week that we need to keep in mind. If we're gonna keep Health Days the way it is that people love, the thousands of people that come, we need to figure out how that's gonna look for everybody. They're not the only ones, they're just the first ones to come and talk to us about it.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. That's helpful to kind of take that into context, I guess, as we're thinking about this. Another quick thought that I had too, it's been mentioned that there are other entities or other cities or other companies that rent the space at Smithfield. I don't know if, or at Skyview. I don't know if Skyview has any priorities over allowing a city-operated nonprofit, you know what I mean, to be able to have a higher choice or a higher priority. I don't know. Maybe that's something that can be discussed with the principal and who are the administrators. And I guess to me, that's maybe the best person you should work with is the administrator. Teachers are teachers, and obviously, you know, they have classrooms and things like that, but they don't own the building. So it's really the administrators that should be kind of making that decision.
And I do know that the theater that uses it in June does have, I guess they feel they have priority because they've been using it for the last few years. This year they're not, as they decide to do a co-op, but I am under the understanding that that's not going to happen again next year. I don't know if that's true or not, but the connection is a family one that gives them that priority as well.
Mayor?
So I don't know if that's something that we can work with or not.
Yeah.
I might be overstepping here a little bit, but as I listen to this, I think the resolution is going to have to be a pinpointed, focused effort. It's not gonna be something that we can spread across us or that we can deal with. I think, in my personal opinion, and I don't wanna tell you what you should do, but I really feel like you would be the one that would have the most clout to
Well,
have
that's why.
the clear, frank,
So we should probably
unbiased.
get together and
Absolutely.
I'm writing notes, and I feel like I have a pretty good pulse of what's going on, but
Okay.
date, time, And I realize he's a new principal too, so.
Yes. I think that's one of the reasons this kind of hit now is because there was a shift in leadership. So that was a vulnerable moment.
I'm happy to armor up and go to battle, so let's, I just want to be full.
I will say Principal Perks has been very polite in all of
Yeah.
his correspondence, so that seems to be working well as
Well,
of right now.
me not even understanding what was going on, I've heard things too. So, I was angry before I even knew what was going on, and I will have couth and tact, but see what we can
It's-
definitely do for sure.
It's just
so.
really unfortunate.
Right. I got your back.
We appreciate you.
I do too.
Just,
Support
I just
the
want to
base.
say personally, I definitely want to support what you guys are doing. I've been watching from the background and volunteering a little bit here and there over the years, and it has been amazing. And every single one of my kids was involved in this, and it changed their lives. My wife can attest to that, and it's a great program, and I would really hate to lose that. So I will do everything that I can on the city council to try to make sure that we're guarding this as something that's very important. There have been so many conversations here about wanting to keep a small town feel. And what I've learned is it is usually the traditions that we have that creates that small town feel, regardless of how many people are moving in. It is these strong traditions, and we have some great strong ones. This is one of them that's been going on for 20 years. And I have been a beneficiary of that, and I have just loved being able to go to those and see that they're packed each night. And so anyways, you have my full support.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item number 4, presentation of the Transportation Master Plan by representatives of JUB Engineers. And turn the time over to Quinn Dance. Thank you for accommodating that before, so.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do that. Thanks for having me back. So tonight we'll have a little discussion on this Transportation Master Plan update, and I'll try and hit some of the highlights of it. I have Justin that'll scroll through a few of the items in it to kind of give those highlights and give us something to look at. But I will start with just a little background. Once again, I kind of shared this a little bit, I don't know when it was, a month ago maybe or so, that I was here last with the general plan. The previous Transportation Master Plan was completed in 2017, so we're coming up on about 10 years. Generally, depending on growth, master plans or utility plans should be reviewed and looked at every 5 to 10 years. Some cities don't have to do that as often necessarily if things don't change drastically, but it's typically a good practice to have that reviewed every 5 to 10 years. And obviously we just went through the general plan process. It's very similar, except as we transition from that process to this Transportation Master Plan, there's a little bit of a different look at it. Any of these transportation plans, any of these utility plans start to become a lot more technical and data oriented. For example, you'll have a culinary water master plan, and a lot of that information that you gather is either from state guidelines, state recommendations, or actual water meter data. And so it's really data focused, which is a little bit different than what you just went through in the general plan process. And that Transportation Master Plan is a very similar process to those water master plans and things. So in a master plan, there are still opportunities for policies and to implement certain things, but really the main focus and the main things that come out of a utility plan or a transportation master plan is going to be project recommendations and standards. And you're going to get that kind of guidance through these documents. So just to start, the plan was developed. It was through a UDOT technical planning assistance. I think I've shared that before, but that is a funding program, a program that gives cities the opportunity to do general plans, zoning updates, transportation master plans, and a variety of other items like that. And what happened here with Smithfield, UDOT contributed $90,000, and Smithfield comes with the rest of that. And depending on the city, sometimes 90,000 covers that planning process. This was a much bigger process where it included the general plan as well. And so, but it was a great opportunity for Smithfield to kind of use that funding opportunity to get this done. So we had a lot of collaboration and guidance from city staff through this process. We did meet with UDOT several times to discuss their needs, since they are the funding agency, and there are definitely UDOT highways going through Smithfield, so they have a vested interest. And then we also utilized a lot of regional resources, and you may be familiar with, and I'll talk a little bit later about some of the details, but the CMPO, Cache Metropolitan Planning Organization, and then there was I shouldn't say recently, but because it's been about 10 years actually too, that North Cache regional transportation plan, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But so I'll jump in. What Justin pulled up first is in this transportation master plan, we utilize functional classifications. I recognize some of you may be aware of these somewhat, but I'll probably just talk to kind of describe them all briefly to make sure we're all kind of on the same page. But these functional classifications will essentially be utilized by the Federal Highway Administration. They provide these definitions, these descriptions, and what they could be used for. You go all the way from an interstate, which we all kind of understand that principle, down to essentially what would be a local road. And those classifications have a variety of uses, as he's showing there. So there's going to be 5 of them, roughly, if I remember right. So interstate, arterial, sorry, Justin, major arterial, minor arterial, and then a collector, and then local. So as we walk through this, you'll hear those terms, and you'll hear where those are utilized, but that's where those come from, Federal Highway Administration. In order to get funding from the federal agencies, you do have to classify your roads along these terms. And most of the funding typically goes to collector classification and above. And so you'll find that a lot of the, obviously local streets are more of a city issue, but federal funding can come into play once you get into that collector status. Any brief, just anything on those classifications that I kind of browsed through them pretty quick, but okay, so we also did spend a little bit of time in section 2.4. There was traffic counts that were done, and this was back in fall of 24. We started this planning process quite a bit there, and I was going to touch on figure 2. Sorry, Justin. Scroll back up to that. I just remembered. I skipped my step. 1 page back. I just discussed that one right there. I just discussed those functional classifications, and we have a map in there, figure 2, in the page down from that kind of highlights what the existing functional classifications in Smithfield are. So as we started this process, like I said, a couple years ago almost now, we jumped into traffic counts. We did that at 9 different intersections and then 9 different street locations. They're called turning movement counts and then just average daily traffic counts. So that's the basis of a lot of this discussion and what we had. And so those traffic counts were completed. We kind of slowed down on this plan a little bit as the general plan kind of ramped up because we wanted to kind of do those in tandem, but we wanted to make sure that general plan got through the process first. Then in a transportation master plan, you have different levels of service. Levels of service range from what's called an A to a D. And you have this also in like water master plans and storm drains and things like that, but the definitions are different in each one of them, obviously. The simple process is that level of service A through D essentially means that it's free-flowing traffic. Level of service E through F, you start to have gridlock, is how the Highway Administration refers to it. And then level D is essentially the minimum desirable level. That's right before you start to curse and have issues as you're driving down the road. So we hope to keep everything at a level of D and above. As I mentioned, there was a number of different studies regional studies that were taken into account. These regional studies, like I mentioned, were the CMPO, North Cache Transportation Plan. Those were all utilized in this study as well. Justin just scrolled to section 3.2. In the CMPO plan, Regional Transportation Plan there, which was most recently done in July 2023, they had highlighted different phases, and we included those phases in this plan of the particular roadways that affected Smithfield. And so how they looked at it is phase 1 of their projects, the ones that applied to Smithfield were 250 East, 455 East, and 1000 East. And then I'll touch base on kind of how we implemented those into this plan here a little bit later. And then they went into phase 2 and phase 3. Just for a little background, phase 1 essentially says that's roughly the next 10 years. I think it was to 2032, I want to say. It's a little bit less than 10 on that, but so we utilized that same planning effort. We utilized a lot of the modeling that CMPO has done because there is a regional transportation model for the area. Not all cities have that, but Smithfield does, along with Hyde Park, Logan, any of them. They have this transportation model that's been completed by CMPO, and that is utilized in this effort as well. So I want to jump to kind of the meat of the report, which is figure 5. So that'll be a few pages down for you. But as he keeps scrolling there, so what this figure is going to show you, right, there we go, thank you. This is essentially, if nothing was done until 2050, here's the traffic counts that we would anticipate, and here's what the level of service would be within the city. And really, to be quite honest, we maybe don't always think that it's flowing great, but generally it is within Smithfield, other than Main Street. But that's an ongoing issue. That is in the level of service E and F, which is where we don't want to be, as I mentioned. D is the minimum, and everything above that, you're in pretty good shape. And so just to kind of set the stage for that, this is essentially a 24-year build out, and not doing really any major improvements. This is where you would be. And so we kind of broke out in this report. There were certain areas of concern that we heard from staff. We tried to group those areas of concern. Just for your information, we grouped them into what's essentially the east bench, the northeast bench, which is up above Canyon Road, Main Street, 250 East corridor, and then any north and south connections or east and west connections that we can make. And so those are kind of the areas that they were grouped into. But as we jump into kind of the projects themselves and what those future improvements need to be, I'll kind of talk through that because it is across the whole city still, even though those are some of the areas of concern. Figure 6 will be kind of the next discussion point, and it's going to show essentially the projects that have been discussed. And then I'll jump into the actual costs and kind of the breakdowns of what that looks like. But what we have here is this shows the projects that are being proposed, and the next tables will kind of break those out into smaller items. But what essentially occurs here is pretty big improvements along 250 East. I am showing, what you'll notice is some of those roads are dashed. What that means is there's currently not a road there at all. So, but those other ones that are solid, there's a road, but there's still improvements to be made. So just to kind of clarify that. And so what we find is a couple of roads would change to, well, not change, they currently are actually, the pink ones are minor arterials, which we would consider 250 East. That is a little bit different change. 250 East kind of currently comes up to about 400 South and dead ends in a way. I mean, I know it does continue on with a little jog, but the designation of it, the classification of it, doesn't really carry through. Now this opportunity would carry it through up to 400 North, and then obviously SR 218 is considered a minor arterial here as well. And then you get into those collectors, major collector, minor collector, and then minor collector city. Now what I should maybe preface that with a little bit is you'll notice even with the designations, you're still typically 2 lanes, but what those designations differentiate is the right-of-way widths and your pavement widths. And so those are slightly different. I can flip to that real quick because I want to share. Right. Just for example, major or minor arterial would be an 80-foot right-of-way, but you'd have 52 feet of pavement. That's the standard section there. Major collector is still 80-foot right-of-way, but it's only 43 feet of pavement. So what that means is you're going to have a little more park strip. They all have sidewalks, but you can have a little more park strip and things like that on those major collectors compared to a minor arterial. Minor collector is now down into the 66-foot range with 37 feet of pavement. And then your local roads are a 60-foot. And some of those local roads are also 66. And even current blocks, old blocks are much larger than that. But that's typical in Cache Valley. And that pavement in those local roads is around 31 feet. And so your park strips change size, your pavement width changes. That's kind of what you're getting with these different designations. So I want to jump into, whoops, there we go, lost my window. The next tables kind of decide or call out the projects themselves. It's actually, I think, one more page, Justin. Access management, that's a discussion to be had. Actually, it's a few more pages, sorry, apologize. Yep, right into that capital improvement plan. So how this is broken out is if you kind of have that map in your mind, these are the roadways on that map. Now how our transportation group breaks it out, because this goes for like 5 pages, but it breaks it into smaller blocks. It's something that you can kind of bite off a little bit more, because for example, if you just did 1,000 East, which is those first 6 or 7 lines, you're $15 million, you know, and so they break it into smaller blocks, a little bit easier things to bite off. And so that's why these tables kind of break it smaller and give you the opportunity to maybe pick off a piece here and there. But what this first group is referring to is really these 0 to 5 year projects. And I generally can group them into essentially it's 1,000 East, 800 West, 250 East, 400 North, and 680 North. And so these next 5 years, those 5 roadways would be a priority based off of this transportation master plan. We do recognize that even in the regional transportation plan with Hyde Park and things, there's 455 East. But the need for that, as far as Smithfield's perspective is not here in the next 5 years. Potentially in the future, for sure, and that's on the map. But it would probably happen after that 5-year window. And so I'll touch base. I mean, obviously the big connectors to Hyde Park, 1,000 East, 250 East, those would run all the way to the south to your annexation boundary and then into Hyde Park. 800 West would be essentially widening all along that corridor, honestly, from the north end of the city to the south for the most part. It does differentiate the classification, and that breaks at, I want to say it was 218. Or no, maybe it was 400 south. I can't remember where that break is, to be honest. Yeah, I think it's 218. I think it's the highway where it breaks from a collector to a minor arterial. So it actually increases in size on that south end of town. And so, but all of 800 West would be an improvement. And then 400 North, because as I mentioned, we want to try and get those east-west connectors. That would be something from The west side across the highway over to Canyon Road on the east, potentially, and then 680 north would be just a small portion up there, from the highway over to the connections on that east side. So, and then, like I said, there's the 5+ years and beyond. Once again, those are 800 east, 455 east, and several others in that area. But that kind of, with those projects, the main focus and the feedback from city staff is those first 5 years, you'll want to prioritize those, like I said, 5 roadways. And as development comes in potentially in any of those areas, you want to make sure you consider that right of way, consider that build out, and what could and needs to occur in those locations. There was a little bit of a discussion in here too. I mean, there were some intersection discussions, and that occurs in here, potential for roundabouts. There is a brief discussion on access management. I had Justin kind of scroll through that pretty quick. They also have a little bit of a discussion about other types of transportation and public transportation. What does that look like? And how that could be implemented a little bit here. And then it has other conversations about, as development comes in, what type of traffic impact studies should be requested or required of development. I know the city requires that already, but there is in the appendix here, there is an example of what could be required for those developments to do and what type of studies they should complete. In the appendices, there's also a very detailed breakdown of these projects and the costs that go with them. And then a lot of pages of turning movement counts and all sorts of traffic counts. And so I'm happy to go into more detail. I know I don't want you to think I kind of breezed over anything, but I want to make sure we cover the high points and then open to any feedback. We know that this has been a long time coming, just like the general plan was, and I think through this process and the coordination with city staff and UDOT and the regional plans, I think we have a pretty good layout for things moving forward for Smithfield City. But any questions?
Quick question on how did you decide the different locations you were going to do your testing on, those 9 different locations?
That was a discussion that we had with city staff, and tried to pick the ones that we felt like we could get the most data from. We didn't select, if you notice the list in there, if you've happened to browse through that section, there wasn't any UDOT sections because we can get counts from UDOT fairly easily. We tried to do all those on local roads and tried to take those impacts into account there. So it was a little bit of a discussion with city staff and trying to give us an understanding of where those might need to occur. And I think we've oftentimes recommended, I don't remember if we do it in this one specifically, but it would be actually wise for a lot of cities to continue to do periodic traffic counts at different locations throughout a city, just on a regular basis, just to see how traffic is moving, see where it's going. You don't necessarily have to do a master plan to do that, but it's good information to have. So,
How often do you recommend that be done?
I've seen cities do. I mean, you get into some. I guess I could take Logan for example, and they're constantly doing them at different spots throughout the city. I don't know if Smithfield would have to do it constantly, but I think if you had a few intersections every couple years, or if you have a trouble area, I think you could approach that and do some traffic counts. That's obviously the tubes that you usually see across the streets. And sometimes I've seen people just go out and count cars. That's definitely an option that you could do as well. So every couple years it's probably worth doing, especially if there are some areas that you feel have additional traffic that maybe wasn't accounted for because of timing or other things like that. So
So I'm noticing on here that 10th East is taking priority over 4th West. Is that due to traffic, solely traffic, or what's the reasoning for that priority?
Yes, it is. A lot of that 4th West what I understand is the 1000 East gives you that connection into Hyde Park potentially.
Right.
That seemed to be a priority to staff. 4th West would play that key role as well, but I think it could gradually happen later, I guess would be the simplest way to put it.
So that's what made it the priority.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe Clay or
And
Justin.
right
if
now,
you've heard.
we're working with the county and Hyde Park on 250 East, 1000 East, 1200 East. There's been some money allocated for studies for those that we've been part of. So there's been a big focus in that world. Also nice meeting with, when you talk to JUB, is, you know, what the impact that the temple will have, how people will access the temple, what roads will be, you know, used to, it's gonna be super popular, we all know. Where all the development's currently going, what the build out is. You know, we know that 4th North obviously has one access right now till 680 goes. What that impact has, you know, 8th West, as you've discussed, but also we really wanted to make sure that we're connecting with Hyde Park and planning with Hyde Park. They're really good to meet with right now, as well as the county, because there is a gap between Hyde Park and Smithfield right now. We both know where we want to meet, which is 4400 North, but we have to actively involve the county, because until we both meet and annex, they will be involved. And like right now, they're actively involved in 250 East, and how that's going to connect with Wolfpack Way long term. So there has been a real focus. I think there's been a focus, Quinn, like on the whole city, but especially on south and west, and connecting to Hyde Park and planning for those. You know, 455 is mentioned in there. When you drive up there, there's really nothing, right, at this point, but we have to have that road long term. Clay right now is working on 1200 East for some possible funding there, 250 East for some possible funding there. So we're looking at those type of things, but I think the thing that you will mostly take away from this, roads are beyond expensive. There is not one price on there that's reasonable, let's be honest. Like, we're not writing checks for those. So that's the hard part is we have 323-page document that's very, very, very expensive. We're building 3 million gallon water tanks a lot cheaper than we're building roads, like, sadly.
Thank you.
Well, that's kind of related to one of my questions is some of the, I love what's happening here, Gwen, and thanks for coming and sharing this with us. But a lot of what's here is dependent on county and Hyde Park decisions and priorities too. And it's great that we have priorities here laid out for us, but that doesn't necessarily, or does it, line up with their priorities? Or are they working off the same set of priorities? Like, to what level of coordination is happening between municipalities and the county to kind of facilitate our priorities happening the way we want to see them happen?
Yeah. Go ahead, Justin.
So 250 right now, big priority between the two cities. 1200, big priority between the two cities, simply because of, there's actually going to be some development going on in Hyde Park relative to 1200. Hyde Park's actively working with us on what they're doing and what their priorities are. 1200's priority, 250's a priority. We both know 455, it's not as much a priority as, will it be long-term? Yes, but they want to connect Wolfpack Way as much as we want to connect Wolfpack Way. 1200 East, they know is very important to us. They've been working with us on that. We know that 1000 East is problematic at best. It's in the county. We don't want to spend money on a county road. Hyde Park doesn't want to spend money on a county road. The county doesn't want to spend money on a road that really, in reality, long-term, probably won't be their problem. So that's a problem. Clay, do you want to chime in on any of those? You know,
just get you prepared for the August meeting. That money, the COG, in answer to your question, Council of Governments is working towards getting those roads that Justin just mentioned and that Quinn mentioned. And there is, I don't know that we'll be able to fund all of them, but we're going to ask every chance we get a chance to ask
COG for money, we're gonna ask them for those particular roads.
That budget last year was 17 million and it's dropped to 7. So it's become slim. So the priority is obviously there's some things that Hyde Park has done that they zigged when we zagged, and so we're actively negotiating through that. So trying to figure out what the best plan is.
And money's been put towards studies to help with that.
Yeah.
Well, I know one of the concerns we have, and obviously the primary concern on this map is the highway, the Main Street, right? And how do we move traffic off Main Street? But it seems to me that one of the major obstacles of that happening is the airport, where it is, because getting a bypass of any kind is really tough to go around the airport one way or the other. I don't see on this plan any indicators that there's a priority to try to offload traffic from Main Street or the highway, other than a minor arterial on the east or a minor arterial, but those are outside of the city. Like, it's the outside of the city stuff that's affecting what's in the city, and that's why I'm kind of worried about and concerned, interested in what kind of collaboration is happening with the county and Hyde Park and Logan in terms of where do we see moving this traffic that is clogging our Main Street right now. And what I'm seeing here is a okay first step, but it doesn't seem to really address the problem that we're facing.
Yeah, and to be honest, I wouldn't disagree with you. That is the struggle, is we as Smithfield City take this on, and like you said, we can show some nice stuff on the east, some stuff on the west. We can even show some stuff going east and west to kind of have another connection to the highway to get people off and on. There is that gap with the county, Hyde Park, that Justin just mentioned. And so the pursuits to continue to have those discussions should happen. And I know they are. I know they are to a very extensive extent, but it is a process that unfortunately we don't always have a lot of control over. So I agree with you, and I think it's a valid concern. And so because like the last regional transportation plan between North Logan, Hyde Park, Smithfield, and even Logan was involved, was back in 2017. Since then, CMPO has done a lot of work, and they've had some really good efforts. Like I said, they've kind of outlined their phases, which are a lot of what we've outlined as well. So I think there is some good efforts happening, and there's COG that kind of tries to facilitate this, but it's got to be an ongoing discussion. To your point, I think 100%, because
I don't know if that's JUB that's involved in that, or if that's us as a council, or if that's Clay or Justin or who that is that can push a little bit on CMPO and say, hey, what you haven't got an effective enough plan to address the problem that's landing in Smithfield.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know if JUBs can help with this, is figure out, okay, how do we, like in a 20-year plan, what would that look like? How do we offload that traffic? And then as a city, we're making recommendations to CMPO or the county or whoever so that we can solve that in a reasonable kind of way. I'd like to see a little pushback from here back to them, instead of just always taking whatever they're saying and kind of adapting and tweaking, the deck chairs on the Titanic, so to speak, and not getting all the way of where we want to get to. I don't know whose role that is, but I'm just voicing that as a concern.
Clay, correct me if
100%.
I'm wrong, but isn't right now Logan, North Logan, Hyde Park, Smithfield, and UDOT in the process of getting ready to do a US 91 study?
Yes.
Yes.
That is correct. And
Like a joint study between
Yeah.
all of us.
They're-
And that is,
That'll be interesting.
go ahead, Clay.
They're actually doing this, they're picking a consultant to do the work, and there has been money set aside. They're coming up a little short on the money. They asked if we wanted to contribute more. The cities were hesitant to. In fact, none of them had money to contribute, so they're still looking for a consultant. But when they do, the consultant will, as you're aware, be looking at how to take traffic from Main Street. And I'm actually kind of glad that this process is taking a while, because it will give a chance for that temple to open, which will influence one of the intersections in Smithfield quite a bit. So even though that study has been mostly funded, it is going forward, and they're trying to choose a consultant right now.
And my involvement in a few of those conversations is, it's basically like a US north of 2500 north in Logan.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the conversation is like a typical UDOT conversation is get the traffic off the road, right? Okay, well, the road's not wide enough to do that, right? There's not room for frontage, there's not room for, so the elephant in the room, and I've asked many times, is we need to either go east or we need to go west. And I mean, look at that, the bottleneck is not going away. It turns from red to pink, but it's still,
Right.
so yes, we've had those conversations too, but it's, really there needs to be a big, wide, north-south all the way through.
Yeah, well, it hits us harder than it hits anybody, because it
Right.
bypasses Hyde Park already, and it really lands on us, and so I don't know, whatever we can continue to do to affect that. I'm glad the study's gonna happen, and I agree with you, Clay. I think it's a good thing that it's taken a little while to get off the ground so that we can see what that new traffic pattern is gonna look like once the temple opens.
I know that JEB's been involved in that conversation. Like Clay said, I don't know how far it is down the process, but I know, because I've heard it in discussions around the office and stuff, that our transportation groups, looking at that a little bit, so.
Would I be correct to assume that that type of a study, that type of a survey is also taking into very heavily consideration of schools and where schools are located? Just because as I continue to look at this, and I look, granted, it's 25 years down the road,
Right.
but we're sitting there looking at Skyview sitting on the corner of a minor arterial and a major collector that we have just been fighting out how to even be able to get kids across that, and we're just, it's 25 years down the road. We probably should assume that Skyview is going to be at 2700 East or 2700 West, or we may have a totally different high school look by then, but that one's a concern to me.
Yeah, and that is, as Quinn mentioned, Wolfpack Way, they're looking at widening that, they're looking at making it connect. In fact, the last study they did that the mayor and I were involved with was actually what the alignment should be as it leaves Hyde Park. And I believe that decision was made, and the CMPO is looking at adhering to that decision and putting money towards that. And I hope that you're all here next month when we talk a little bit more about those two routes.
I had one more question.
Yeah.
In our master plan for the city, our future land use map,
Yeah.
we've got the southwest corner of town kind of designated as light industrial kind of territory. To what degree was any of the road design or transportation plan designed to accommodate larger vehicles or more traffic for that kind of land use?
I think, because what you're saying is like, is there a thicker section? Is there anything like that? The standard sections, to be quite honest, didn't get modified for something like that. That doesn't mean they couldn't. Those could be modified at any point. The right of way and how that functions on like that, you said the southwest corner, right?
Right.
Yeah. How that functions would probably stay the same because it is becoming a larger road anyways. And so that right of way width would probably still stay the same of what we've applied here. That typical section could change. We didn't incorporate that necessarily into this plan, but I think that could get changed and with the city staff discussion and decision as the need arises, for sure.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? I'm sure there's lots, but
There's a lot to look over. There is for sure. So, but it's been a great opportunity. You know, I hope we kind of have presented what we could to kind of summarize
That's
that for
great.
you. But
Super helpful, Quinn.
Good.
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you, Quinn.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 5, city manager report.
Council, before I give a couple of comments, I've asked Chief Hunt tonight if he wouldn't address fires and what's allowed and not allowed. People here, phase 2, restriction 2. But yeah, I don't think most people know what that means based on the input we're getting here in the office. I just asked Chief Hunt to take a minute and review what exactly that means for the hundreds in attendance and the 1,000 online. I think they all probably want to know. So we'll turn it over to Chief Hunt for a minute.
So, essentially, we all know that the vast majority of the state went into stage 2 restrictions. However, that doesn't really affect Smithfield because the state can't mandate what the cities do. So when they went into stage 2, if you look at that, it says, all of this order does not affect private lands within incorporated towns or city limits. So we fall back to our city ordinance, which essentially is level 1. So if you look at the descriptions in there, setting, building, maintaining, attending, or using open fires of any kind except campfires built within designated area provided for them, and approved campgrounds, picnic areas, or permanently improved places of habitation. So people can still have campfires at their house. Also the other things, grinding and whatnot. So essentially, our city ordinance matches stage 1 restrictions. So when we went into stage 2, it really doesn't change what Smithfield City citizens can do. And the previous ban by the state forester that was authorized by the governor did not address fires. That was strictly for fireworks, and it was only in effect from the 2nd to the 5th and has expired since then. So really that has changed nothing either. If the city wants to go to a stricter ban, it's gonna have to do it by ordinance, which means it'd have to go through all the steps of changing this ordinance.
Have you had any problems, any calls, any issues?
Have we had any problems? That's a loaded question.
I want to hear it.
No, I mean, we've ran into some things that we figured out over the 4th with some citizens that felt like they could use public parks for said events that we've had to stop them from doing. Really, for the most part, it was far better than I thought it was going to be. I went out and drove around the East Bench continuously through those nights, and for the most part, it was quieter than I've ever seen it.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be some, but it was fairly quiet.
How were those few that did have fireworks? How was that addressed?
I don't know. We'd have to ask Travis if he had any that he actually issued citations for or warned and told to stop. Most people will comply fairly easily. Like I said, it was pretty quiet for us.
And we're still waiting to make decisions for the 24th, right?
Yeah, we're just basically seeing how dry and hot it gets, and then see if there's kind of evaluate that. But sooner than later, yes, we'd like to make a
So
decision.
how do you base your decisions
How
for
do I
like the
base-
24th? Like if things get worse, like what's your line where you say, okay, we are not going to allow fireworks anywhere?
We watch, a lot of what we watch is the fuel moistures that are in the fuels that are up there. To give you an example, I looked at these pretty extensively before the 4th. We were only about 1% or 2% lower than what we were last year. And we were almost identical to what we were on the 24th last year, on the 4th this year. So we're a couple weeks ahead of schedule in the dryness of it. But, I mean, it wasn't that much difference. We allowed the fireworks on the 24th last year. We didn't run into any major problems. So, yeah, we're dry. It's dangerous. I think we need to look at that as we get closer. We're expecting, they're forecasting triple-digit temperatures this weekend. It's going to only get drier without any moisture actually hitting the ground. So, however, if we're going to change it and not wait for the state to change it, we're going to have to do it by ordinance, which does take time. So we're going to have to make the decision fairly quick if we're going to change the actual ordinance to support a narrower area that they're allowed, or ban, or whatever we want to do.
There was a significant, well, there were multiple people that expressed to me a real concern where we were still allowing things where other cities within the valley were taking the state's approach and banning everything, that we would have a huge influx coming into Smithfield of people looking for other locations to let off their fireworks. Your impression of whether or not we witnessed that?
I did not see that in this city.
Okay.
Part of my thought process is a lot of this is perception. So because it's been talked about more this year, it's become more of a priority and people are paying attention to, and fear can be driven by things that are not even real sometimes. But my question is, do you have a feel for like any of the fires that have happened this year? How many of those have been because of fireworks?
Pretty few so far that I know of around this area. There's been some small minor ones that have been caused by fireworks. I'm not sure they're releasing anything concrete on some of these bigger ones yet. I know that there's a lot of things being said in the media, but I haven't seen like any actual reports from some of these bigger fires. I do agree with you. I think we've seen more of this year, and it's more public this year about the risks, probably because we have the biggest fire in the country right now in our state. So it's getting a lot of media, and I think there is a lot of people that are fearful of that. I know, speaking from me and all the phone calls I've been answering, it's pretty mixed. Like, I've had people call very upset that we weren't allowing fireworks everywhere, and I've had them call that we are. I mean, it's been on both sides of the fence. It's pretty equal to people that are, the opinions that they have about the fireworks this year.
I've had the same.
Nope.
Nothing else?
That's super
Thank you,
helpful.
Chief.
Thank you.
Keep us updated, please.
Just one more thing, Council. Sean, our library director, had sent us some stats that I found kind of fascinating from where we used to be and where we are now. Interestingly enough, June 29th, most patrons in the last fiscal year, there was 417 in one day. And they average about 125 to 175 a day. For fiscal year 2026, they had 45,347 visitors, which was an increase of 2,038 over the previous year. For programming attendance, they had 10,701, which was a 740 increase over the previous year. Here's the crazy part, is you compare that to 2022. In 2022, they had just under 30,000 patrons. And in 2026, we had 45,000. So we increased by 1/3 in 4 years. When you look at that. Programming in that same 4-year period went from just over 4,400 involved to over 10,000 in a 4-year period. So library, Miss Karen and Sean are amazing, as well as that whole staff, the library board. Pretty off the chart what that group has done and how that's growing. Planning Commission meeting will be next week. There's some housekeeping ordinance that we'll be looking at, possibly come to the council down the road. But outside of that, Mayor, I don't have anything else tonight.
Thank you. Carolee, did you have a comment?
Mhm.
Hi, Carolee Stokes. Is the shooting range on the east bench a fire concern? You know that, what do you call that?
Yeah.
You know where they go on the east, that area on the east bench and shoot?
Dry
Is
Canyon?
that a fire danger?
I mean, sure, they're shooting guns, but they are in the county, so they're under the stage 2 restrictions. So there really shouldn't be any going on up there.
Because you hear them shooting up there all the time, but.
We
that-
refer everyone to dispatch when they hear that, Carolee, so that the county can respond, because we can't respond to them.
Oh,
So it is in the county.
You guys can't do anything about it.
We send them to the county
It's
where it's in the
county.
county and ask them to not call 911, but to call Central Dispatch, the non-emergency number.
Yeah, because there's shooting going on up there all the time, so.
Mhm.
So do you call the county then?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Curly.
Thank you. All right, council member reports, who would like to start?
Well, I'll start because I have nothing to add. We were just here a couple weeks ago, so
Okay.
not much has changed. And Justin kind of highlighted what I wanted to highlight about the library growth. And so that's awesome what's happening there.
Thank you.
And I'll go next because I have almost nothing to say because we met 2 weeks ago. One thing I forgot to mention 2 weeks ago, that in June, Smithfield City did get accepted with the Main Street Utah program. And so we're a Tier 1 status with them. There's 3 different levels, 1, 2, and 3. Right now, Logan City is the first city that has gotten Tier 3 status, which is the highest status that you can have of involvement with the Main Street Utah program, and they just got awarded that this year. And so that's kind of a neat opportunity. I have already had multiple businesses on Main Street reach out to me. We kind of put that information in the 3 things, and I've had several businesses reach out that want to learn more about that. Our committee is still learning about some of those opportunities, but there are a lot of grant opportunities and people that we can work with through the Main Street Utah program to kind of help us know how to be able to beef up our Main Street, help revitalize that area, and so we're excited to be involved in that and moving forward with it. So that's about all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, all I have is the royalty is in the Hyde Park Parade on the 18th of this month at 10 a.m. I am not able to pull them for this parade, so I'm just wondering if any of you are able to, or if we can just have city staff do it. So just check your schedules and let me know if any of you are able to.
That was the.
What was the
18th?
date again?
July 18th. The parade is at 10, so lineup would be at 9:30, so you would have to leave the Civic Center about 9 with the flow. It is a Saturday. Mm-hmm.
I might be able to help with that.
Okay.
I might be able to as well. Okay, so.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Todd?
And mine's just really quick as well. Just a reminder and kind of a shout out of how nice it was to get the 30 new trees that were planted in Mack Park, involving Tree Utah, trees that we got from the grant from Tree Utah that was worked out through James Hunsaker. I got a chance to see some of those when we did some family pictures over there a week ago. They look fantastic. Really, really nice to have that in there. And the tree committee, next time they meet, they will start discussing the possibility of slight adjustments to the park strip tree choices and refining that a little bit more depending upon the width of the park strip, because there may be a little bit of tweaking that we can do there to help our sidewalks out. And then as far as just a quick report on over at the museum, They have had personnel every single one of the days that they have been open. They have had people coming through, either at least individuals, if not multiples. And they have also been called several times for off-hour special cases to have somebody come through, groups wanting to come through. So it is getting, while it might not be as much as everybody involved with the Historic Society wants, they are certainly getting activity through there, and that makes them really happy. And I think we should be proud of it. It's great for us to be starting to gear up for what I'm sure we'll see some increased traffic when the Temple open house happens, etc. So continuing to plan and work out the next phases of what they need to do with that building and what priorities we put on those. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. I've just got a couple things here. The physical installation of the canyon water line started this week. The floor to the new water tank, storage tank, has been poured, and they're now forming up the walls. The infrastructure on 925 South Road project is 95% complete. As soon as the last section of piping is installed, the road work will start. As temperatures continue to be in the 90 to 100 plus degree range, we would ask everyone to conserve water where possible. Lawns will get dry over the next couple of months, but please help keep our system full and conserve and cut back where possible. The intent is to not have to implement or any type of a restriction as long as we can and will work together to conserve and keep the system full. Please adjust your sprinkler systems and cut back where possible. The flashing crosswalk sign on 250 East and 800 South has been installed and will be functioning probably in the next week or so. I'd also like to thank all of the volunteers who helped throughout the city. Some auxiliaries such as a youth theater, youth council, senior sitter, arts council, historical society, tree committee, and many more would not be possible without the volunteers who help them function. Thank you for your time, dedication, and volunteerism on behalf of the city. And that's all I've got. Any other comments?
I don't think so.
All right.
Would you be willing to take a motion to adjourn?
I would entertain that motion.
I'll second.
I would like to so move that we adjourn.
I will second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.